I wanted to take just a few minutes to go over the personal narrative essay expectations and instructions so that you clearly know what is being asked of you. So, for the instructions, this is what it says. For this essay, you will write a personal narrative, which is a story from your life. The key will be to ask yourself, what stories are within me? We all have a story to tell, though finding that story can be difficult. Sometimes our stories are buried in self-doubt or pain. Other times we feel as though our stories are insignificant because they don't feel deep or painful or important enough. The goal of this essay isn't to write something that makes your reader cry or shocks your reader. The goal is to write a story about yourself that shares something you connect with, something that's important to you, something that makes you who you are. For this assignment, you should choose a specific audience to whom you are telling your story and determine a reason you want to tell the story to the audience you select. It's best to move away from, I'm writing this story because my professor told me to. Instead, choose a more meaningful reason to tell your story. It will make your story more powerful. Perhaps your story is written to an audience of friends or an audience of foes. Perhaps you will write your story with a parent or loved one as your intended audience. Perhaps you want to write to a general audience to share some sort of life truth, or perhaps you want to tell your story to someone with an opposing viewpoint. What's important is telling your story for a reason to a specific audience. As you write your personal narrative essay, keep the following in mind. Stories should have a plot that includes a beginning, middle, and end, which means your essay should follow Freytag's pyramid, which we talked about in class. Your essay will be assessed on your execution of this. This means that you need a clear inciting event. You need clear characters and exposition. You need clear rising action, a clear climax, a clear falling action, and a clear resolution. You will be graded on whether or not you are following Freytag's pyramid successfully. Additionally, you'll want vivid descriptions to help your reader feel as though they are experiencing what you're writing about. You can enhance your description through use of imagery and specific details. Think about the stories we've read so far. What details and images were provided to help the story come to life? The story should include clear setting and clear characters. You will want your story to show where you are and who the people in the story are. What do they look like? What are they thinking about? What are their motivations? You should be considering this as you're writing your story. You'll want your narrative to reveal conflict, emotions, and actions within the main character and the supporting characters. Obviously, the main character is most important because this is a personal narrative. You would be your main character, so that should be fairly easy for you to reveal. But you don't want your supporting characters to be totally flat either. We do want to know what motivates them. You should be using dialogue between your characters or even internally to add realism to your story and make your story stronger. It'll likely be best to focus on a specific encounter so not to stretch your story too thin. Do not try to tackle events that span more than a day. You can do this. One of the samples does span more than a day, but it's harder to do than if your events are only taking place over a short period of time. It keeps your story from getting too unwieldy. Ultimately, the reader should feel, see, and understand the experience you are writing about. Keep in mind, the most important factor to consider in a personal narrative is you. Choose an idea for a personal narrative that intrigues you. If your narrative bores you, it will bore your readers. You want to write a descriptive personal story with vivid characters, actions, and emotions. Also, you should select a story you want to share with others. You're revealing not just what happened to you, but also a piece of you. Is your personal story something you want people to know? It's your story. You decide what to write and who reads it. Then write it well. A final note. I am a mandatory reporter by law, which means if you reveal sensitive information that indicates you may be in harm's way, I am required by law to report that information to the appropriate authorities. So please don't share something that you wouldn't want reported if it is something that crosses those sorts of lines, reveals that type of information. All right, I provided you 2 sample essays, and I'm not going to take the time to walk through those here, but I want you to have a look at each. Sample 1 does a really good job of taking an event that this student dealt with, and it takes place over time. So it's not in that 1 day span. I want you to look at how this student does a good job of managing something that takes place over time, where he's still hitting Freytag's pyramid, he's still including imagery and dialogue and all of those things, but he didn't let his story just totally get out of control. Sample 2, this student, she does something a little bit different. She's in basically just 1 day. There's a little bit of a follow-up at the end that goes outside of that day, but you're really very much in the action of the story and what she's experiencing as she's experiencing. Both of these stories are great. Both students earned A's. There are errors. They're not perfect. It's student work, and I do not edit students' work. So you're getting it as they submitted it to me, but both of these students took on this project and handled it well. Either is a good model for what a good personal narrative might look like. I've also provided you a few resources on tips for writing personal narrative and how to master writing a compelling personal narrative. Both of these resources will help perhaps make you feel grounded as you're working on this project. This essay is worth 10 points, and you are required at least 750 words, but typically no more than 1,000. If you need to go a little bit over 1,000, we can talk about that on a case-by-case scenario, but you should not be lower than that 750 if you want to do well in the essay. Your word count does not include a works cited page or any citations. You are required MLA format for page setup, and if you were to use an outside source, you would need a works cited page. The majority of you will not use an outside source. However, some students like to start their essays with like a famous quote or something like that, and if you did that, you would need to cite where that you found that quote and where we could see that. I provided you your due dates, so you'll want to check those out, as well as the rubric. The grading rubric breaks down, this is how I'm looking at your introductory paragraph and thesis. And you don't have a clear thesis in kind of the way that another essay would, but kind of an intrinsic idea of what our message is. Then I'm looking at your body paragraphs, looking to see that you're showing, not telling, that you have clear examples in your paragraphs. And examples for this type of essay are like dialogue or imagery, things like that, your storytelling characteristics. I want to see that you have that rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, all of those things. Conclusion should show a clear resolution to your story, tying up loose ends and providing thoughtful insight. Then I'm going to look at your organization. Are you leading your reader through your ideas in a logical way? Are you using transitional words and phrases? Is there flow in your story? Additionally, I'm really going to look into how you're employing Freytag's pyramid here, that it's provided. Obviously, you're seeing with your intro, body paragraphs, and conclusion that Freytag's pyramid's all through that as well. So you want to make sure you're getting that right. And then the final piece is going to be your proofreading and editing, as well as MLA. Largely here, your MLA grade is going to come from just page setup. But again, if you were to have an outside source, that would need to be cited so that you are fully meeting what is being asked of you here. I hope this video has helped you understand what the assignment is looking for, given you indication of what to look for on the sample essays, as well as helped you see what and how you'll be graded. If you have questions or you need help, please do not hesitate to reach out to me.